Welcome to the future of education. And now, here's your host, Michael Horn.
Welcome to the future of education. I'm Michael Horn, and you are joining the show where we are dedicated to creating a world in which all individuals can build their passions, fulfill their potential, and live lives of purpose. And to help us think through that today, we have a special guest, Dave McCool. He's the founder and currently the CEO at Muzzy Lane, which basically creates dynamic role-play simulations in a variety of fields. We're going to learn a lot more about it, but simulations has been an area that I've been very interested in for a long time in the world of digital, online learning, and so forth, for its ability to, frankly, create more real-world, real-life learning experiences for individuals. Dave, welcome. So good to see you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me here today, Michael.
Yeah, so let's dive in maybe, because I think simulations have taken almost like a level up, if you will, from video game land, right? With AI over the past few years. But let's go back a little bit further than that. Just the founding of Muzzy Lane. What was the big idea behind it? How's the company evolved? Who are who do you serve right now? Where are these simulations and where are they hitting learners at the moment?
Perfect. Yeah. So the big idea is a great place to start. So I'm a software engineer by background. And so when we started Muzzy Lane in early 2000, we had an interest in games and simulations, looked kind of at the landscape and saw education, more digital transformation was happening in education, and just felt as a software engineer, it's like, this is a great place for games and simulations. It's a great place for deeper, more complex interactive software that can really get at better learning experiences and better assessment experiences. So that was really the big idea. 2002 was a very different time than today. We went through a lot of iterations trying to find the right formula. The first half of the company's life was really, we created and released history games into high schools and colleges called Making History. People who use them love them. Not as many people use them as we had hoped in education at the time. But that series lives on in the commercial space on Steam, so it's still available today. Did a lot of work with publishers. Really, kind of most of our work's been in higher ed over the course of the company's life. A little K-12 and a little workforce, but I think for us, the big turning point for us was 2014 and 15. The Gates Foundation, they gave us a research grant because they'd made a lot of investments in games and simulations for learning and hadn't been getting the results they were hoping for. So they wanted us to study the market, which was interesting for us as sort of startup software people to do a research project.
Yeah, I was about to say, how did that land for y'all? Yeah.
It was good. It was a period, a colleague of mine, Connell Ryan, came in and was running the company at the time while I was running the tech transformation we were undergoing. So he had good experience that we didn't with that. And so it was a really great experience. We produced a 40-page report, which is still available on our website.
What did you learn? What were the headlines from that report?
I still remember the headlines today. And it was because they were humbling, really, for us. It was high awareness of games and simulations among instructors and administrators in universities, especially online. But all sorts of logistical challenges with what they were being offered. Things were generally too big, too inflexible. Don't disrupt my course became the thing we heard most commonly. We see the value in what you're doing. I'm not rebuilding my whole course around you.
But I want it to fit in as a module as opposed to I have to rethink 10 of the 13 weeks or whatever.
Right. So it still has to be a scale that fits with my course, that fits with my learning objectives, like time. Like I don't have enough time to spend on that particular part of my courses that this game is going to require for me. And they wanted to control the content. They didn't want to have to go back to a developer constantly to get changes made and updates made. And then kind of the basic ones were it has to run on any device in a browser, on a phone, including had to integrate to the LMS, which meant LTI integration. And it had to meet WCAG 2.0 AA accessibility, now 2.2, which, again, these were not things we came kind of from the serious games and the games for learning side. And we were kind of like, oh, games are great. And you're going to adjust to get those benefits. And so anyway, we were doing a tech transition at the time anyway. That's when the authoring tools came out. And we said, let's just go all the way down to we're going to start putting these tools in the hands of our partners, teach them how to use them, make it as easy as possible. And that's really been the business ever since.
Super. And so what higher ed programs specifically, like when you're talking about the simulations, where have you found the most traction? Are we talking like nursing and it's almost VR like, or are we talking negotiations? Like there's a pretty big range of what these can look like. Where have you found the most traction?
Yeah, I think So when we thought about the tools and we thought about how to help people build their own simulations for learning, we thought a lot about ROI, because when you were building specific games, like we built for principles of marketing, we built for intro Spanish, we built for operations management, but you're building one big product for one course area, and it's hard to make that money back. It's hard to make that work financially. And so what we wanted to do is build templates that were as broadly applicable as possible. So we wanted to make content forms that you could then fill in with what you needed for your course area, and hopefully those would travel pretty broadly. So we're in over 100 course areas in higher ed. Business is probably the number one by usage overall, but a lot of nursing, a lot of medical fields like medical assisting, a lot of the humanities as well. So we're in language learning, we're in sociology, psychology, crisis counseling, social work, all those kinds of places. And the role play format of the multiples that we have really has become the most popular one, just because it does travel really well, and it really fits a lot of what people try to do.
And so it sounds like the secret became, okay, we're going to give up our adherence to what a serious game needs to look like, or what the ideal version of it is. I'm sort of reminded of the Greg Topo book, I think, The Game Believes in You, right? Where he sort of said there's this clash of like these very big learning goals that serious game designers have as they enter the education space. And like, these are not your words, but these are his. As I recall them, was like, sometimes schools can be a little more transactional in the knowledge and skills that they're trying to get across to students. And so, you may lose sort of the organic nature, right, of a game or simulation when put into the container of a class. But it sounds like you were able to take the market's message, make that change, and give more power to educators to create these role plays. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, you are, and it's funny because I'm flashing back to all those
Probably happy to
discussions back
relive.
then.
Yeah, yeah.
Jim G and Kurt Squire and Jane McGonigal and like all the people who initially sort of had this movement, and a lot of the challenges were created by this clash of cultures between what is a game. For a lot of people, a game is voluntary; it has to be fun. What is learning? For some people, learning is very different from that. We're trying to figure out how to fit into the learning environment, push them. Like we didn't want them to just not change anything, because that's not helpful, but not impose criteria that are incompatible with what their goals were.
So talk to us then about, how that's evolved in terms of the product, and how do educators create simulations fit for their course now? How do you help them? What do those authoring tools look like? It seems like a lot of variables, and still could be a lot of work if not done well.
Which is a very good point. So yeah, so from fall of 2015 was when the platform came out until a couple of years ago. It was a pretty just sort of a steady workflow for us. It's like, how do we keep making these tools better? We did do custom tools for some people, partners. For example, Western Governors early on would say, hey, we want to do a pandemic simulation for our Masters in Healthcare Administration, where you run a trauma center during a pandemic. Ironic, that was 2015.
I was going to say that turned out to be prescient, sadly, but yeah.
Yeah. But really mostly just finding, fielding input from customers. How can we make this better? How can we make the learner experience more engaging? How do we give you more flexibility to meet your goals? I think for us, a big thing is auto assessment was always a big requirement from the market for us. So the tension for us was always, how engaging can I make this and still auto grade the experience? Because a lot of times we work with online universities, they don't have the ability to grade open response type things. So that was sort of the challenge. And I think that was really just sort of steadily grew and got up to about 1 million students a year being served. So it was nice. Again, like I said, mostly in higher ed. And then 2 years ago, really AI, it came out before that, but we were not sure what to do until about 2 years ago. And that's really been the newest phase, which has really been pretty exciting.
All right. So let's talk about that enabler. In terms of like, what does AI allow you to do that you couldn't do before? Allow the people that you're working with, your clients, customers, to do that they couldn't do before?
So two really big things. So when ChatGPT sort of burst onto the scene, all of us, I think like everybody else, were like, oh, wow, this is really, really great, or it's going to make it so that no one needs what we do anymore. We weren't sure which. And the first year or so of looking at it, we thought, well, everything felt like a chatbot, right? Everything sort of felt like, where do we put a chatbot? And we were like, well, we could put it into a smart chat or role play sim, or we could put it in the corner and you could ask it when you got confused. But nothing felt quite right. And I think what really struck us a couple of years ago, maybe more 18 months, was instead of thinking about AI as a chatbot that we could put somewhere, we thought about AI as a resource that we could use. So what's AI? It's a big knowledge base of maybe all the world's data, I'm not sure, that you can ask questions of and get responses. And we said, well, how could we, starting from role play simulation, what we do, how could that make what we do better? And we were looking at two use cases that we immediately dove in on. One is we said, what if we could teach it how to make simulations in our format and then provide that to our customers? So, we and everyone else is already using ChatGPT to brainstorm scenarios and stuff, and you're doing a lot of copying, pasting from your chatbot into your tool, whatever tool you're making your content in. We said, well, let's remove that step. Let's just teach it directly how to make our stuff. We're AWS hosted, so we are able to integrate it directly into the platform. And just say, you just start talking to it and you say, I want to build a scenario. Here are my learning objectives, or here's some source material to start from. Walk me through a process that gets me to a fully testable scenario. So that was one, and the market has loved that.
Yeah, I would imagine. I want to come back to that in a moment. Keep going, though.
Yeah, the first full version of that came out over Christmas, over holiday of 2024. And the other was, how do we make the learner experience better with this tool? And that was a little more challenging at first. And then we finally just said, what's the simplest thing we can do? It's like, well, we have the role play simulation has a variety of question types, the usual suspects, multiple choice, fill in the blank, categorize. We said, what if we had an open response question type where instead of using multiple choice in a scenario, you've analyzed data, you're talking to a coworker, they ask you a question, and you just have to answer. And then what we can do is then use the AI as sort of like a fuzzy logic natural language processor backend to say, hey, Michael asked David this. David said this back. Here's the rubric. Here are the learning objectives we're tracking. Give me what Michael says back to David. Grade David's response against the rubric, and give me a rationale for the grading. And so that came out at the same time. And that's been really cool too, because now you can be much more authentic. Like one of our university partners said, I saw what you were doing before. It was really interesting, but it was sort of selected response. I saw open response and I said, oh, that changes everything, because now it's constructed response. Now I, in a scalable auto-assessed way, can respond in my own words. I can, put my mental model out there, and you can grade that.
Well, and it's interesting on that second one, in some ways that also brings it more to the serious games origins, and that there's something more authentic, I would think, about it.
Yes.
That's possible. Maybe I'm making the wrong leap there, but
no, I think that's what we talk about. It's more engaging and it's more authentic. And one thing we did along the way is also we added text to speech and speech to text so that you could actually speak your response. You don't have to type it anymore.
Yeah. So I want to come back to the first one, but one more question. Can you use AI also, like, or maybe this is a couple years off, to start building graphics or things that are more immersive or engaging simulations as well, and maybe make there's been this world of virtual reality that's been 5 years away for 20 years now, but maybe it becomes more possible because the authoring of these environments really goes down in terms of cost and time. What's your take on that?
I completely agree. We, in the authoring era, have really backed off from VR, AR, and 3D work, which we had done in our previous custom days, partly because our guardrails were authorable by non-technical subject matter experts and meet accessibility. So we kept in that box. We're now doing a really good job of generating with AI all the stuff in that box. What's about to come out from us next is generating images. So there's a lot of images and multimedia in our things today, building those. And then our next thing is to look at, okay, can we build a 3D scene in AI? Can we rig 3D characters? Can we create characters that can walk around and interact with each other? So I think that's next, but that's we've tried to be really disciplined about staying in here's what we do really well. 3D and VR definitely has a place. The cost of production and the complexities of deployment mean there are places it's not well suited. So we sort of so far staying where we are.
No, that makes sense. And so then this ties back into the number one use case around enabling the authoring, right? To explode in some ways along your guidelines. And I assume that's something I want to let you elaborate on a little bit, because I assume anyone can create a simulation, but to do it in line with instructional goals, learning design, not overloading the learner, accessibility, et cetera. I assume there's a bunch of guardrails you all have created over time, or rules by which content is created, that you don't want a faculty member, or if it's at Western Governors, right, like a centralized instructional designer, to have to deal with all that complexity. You almost want the AI to just hard code that in some sense.
Yeah, it's funny. Most of our programming on that part of the product in the last year has been prompt engineering and system file work. And what we realized immediately, we didn't just want to put an AI interface in front of our users, like you said, and ask them to try to make this. That would not have gone well. And I think what we constantly, the balance we're trying to find is between how much to let the AI go versus how much to keep it structured. Because, like, especially with universities who've reacted really positively to this, a big part of it is they can get the thing they need out of this easily and quickly. And before, they could either spend a lot of time and money to get the thing they needed, or they could get the thing they didn't really need quickly. So it's trying to find that middle ground of, like, give me your learning objectives, give me your goals, give me your activity purpose. Like, is it a formative assessment? Is it a homework assignment? And then I'll guide you through this sort of, we call them playbooks, this playbook process of saying, here are the steps to get to something usable. And here are the ways in which you can kind of vary along the way.
Last question on this, because you've talked a few times about using it for instruction, but also the assessment inherent in a simulation. Are all the simulations that your customers, universities creating, do they have both of those goals, or some, inherently assessment based and some are inherently instructional, maybe formative assessment based? Like, how does that work? How are simulations used? Maybe talk a little bit about the use cases of simulations within different courses in terms of their instructional versus assessment purposes. And can a simulation serve both?
Yeah, to answer the last one first, yes, it can serve both. And I think for our entire company history, the challenge has been, like, when are we teaching? When are we assessing? Like, games, the big picture promise of games for education is that they instruct and teach at the same time. But that isn't always easy to put into an environment that has other stuff happening. So our customers who do all those things, McGraw-Hill is a big partner. They do a lot of homework assignment work. So, it's graded homework assignment, but it's not really an assessment in that sense. We have partners who use them as formative assessments, as check for understanding. So, like, the end of each section or module, you might take one that they're using to figure out if you've moved on and you understand or not. And then I think to the other extreme, we've got Education Design Lab, which is a partner in the durable skills space, is using it actually as summative capstone assessment to award credentials.
Oh, that's interesting. And to show durable skills, it's because if I'm going to make this up a little bit, but perseverance or something like that is one thing if you can show it in a self-assessment, which is extremely unreliable. But if you can actually exhibit that behavior in a situation where you suffer a setback in a simulation, maybe you can exhibit growth over time on that. Is that sort of the notion?
Or critical thinking is a good example. It's easy to explain to people. You role play someone in a job who's analyzing data, working with coworkers, and trying to apply critical thinking techniques to solve problems. Like, you're presenting these challenges. You're the produce manager at the grocery store. They want to put a kiosk in your section. Should you do it or not? You have to analyze data, interact with stakeholders, and then there are skills you're exhibiting, things like distinguishing facts from opinions, providing thoughtful analysis, identifying core issues. So.
Yeah. And so within different subjects, I mean, you could in some ways, simulations, particularly with the scalability now of AI, I imagine, could actually up level the quality of assessments, trying to get at these things from the multiple choice sort of short answer land to something much more immersive, context based, et cetera.
Yeah. Because I think we've got kind of the uncanny divide right now between how good can an auto graded assessment be, or how authentic, versus how authentic can a human administered assessment be. There's a big gap there today. And we're always been on the side of the auto graded, pushing it towards the human. And I think AI really helps you move that bar quite a bit.
That's really interesting. All right. I know you're able to actually show maybe something.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
but I would love to show our audience sort of some of what this looks like on the ground so that they can really feel what these simulations are.
So my plan here to do sort of the cooking show version of demoing, where
Perfect.
I'll show you the first few steps in the process of building something, and then I'll jump to something that was built with that same process worked all the way through. I'm in our tool right now. This is an activity, so footwear impressions, that I created earlier today. I'll go into the editor. So what I'm going to do here is basically, this is the use case of creating a simulation, homework assignment simulation from a lesson plan.
Okay.
So in this case, I had previously uploaded one of our favorite lesson plans of late, which is this Texas. So the Texas CTE standards has a course called Forensic Science. and there's a lesson called footwear impressions. So doing footwear impression analysis is part of doing forensic science. So I've uploaded that lesson plan previously to the call starting. I can come here and I can say, this will be a homework assignment. And then what we have is currently this playbook called Create Activity, and it's an 8-step process. You can see them on screen right now. You could start at step 4 if you already had learning objectives and you didn't need those extracted from source material. So some people come there, but let's just sort of start. We'll go step 1. And what we do at each step is we pre-populate the prompt, which then is combined with all the system text work we've done under the hood to get back the result for this step. So in this case, it's going to analyze that document and suggest the learning objectives that my activity should have. And people do have the ability to sort of edit and play around with these as they go along.
It's the cooking show thing. I'm supposed to say something witty here as it
right,
pops up with the,
and I think what's interesting about this is, someone said it at ASU.GSV last week or week before, this idea of AI helps take unstructured data and structure it. And this has been kind of an amazing realization for us as we've gone through this process, is that you talk to the AI in natural language, and then it does sort of software programming things. And so it makes sort of the trying different things, experimenting, getting to your goal a lot easier, because you don't have to, you just try it, right? Yep. So I could say, all right, so there's what it suggested: evidence classification, characteristic analysis. So there are the LOs it suggested. If I go to step 2, okay, agree with learning objectives, let's say.
Okay. So you can carve out an exception.
Yeah, yep. I can say, sometimes it'll suggest something that doesn't work well in the simulation format. So accept evidence documentation. So I can say go. So it will go through those. It's going to add those to my activity. So we can say agree. All right, there it is. If I pop over here to the objectives, there they are.
Oh, wow.
There. So like this already would have been a lot more work and time for one of our customers existing. And then what we do is we go to step 3.
So in some ways, this makes it way more self-serve. You all are doing probably less on the back end to help them through.
Yeah. One of the realizations that hit us last year when people started actually using this in our customer set, and actually now some of those activities are live to students, was we realized that they never had to learn the tool. They never left this page. They just worked through these steps, played the activity, maybe made some changes, which you can do here as well, and then they were done. So
does that lower cost increase output? Yes.
Yeah, it's lower cost. It's faster output. I think the most important thing that we've noticed is it takes it from not possible to possible. Like we always say better, stronger, faster, but we're really in not possible to possible.
And so that's interesting, because you had mentioned non-consumption to me when we were trading notes about this. It's right. Almost like people who would never have ventured into the space, all of a sudden, hey, I can do something and get it up and running.
Yeah. I mean, we have thousands of universities using our product indirectly through partners who've built for them. But it was always more challenging to get universities, except say if you're Western Governors, to take on that task themselves. They are building lots of courses, but they always felt the simulation hurdle was a little too high. And this has really changed that for them. So I ran step 3, which was basically to create a story and some characters. So if we go over here and look, we'll see now we have characters that have been created. So Dr. Maya Rodriguez, and then we get these personalities, which are really cool because this is how the AI knows how to speak in this character's voice. And I could edit these if I wanted to, but I won't, just for time purposes.
Sure, yeah.
And I'll just do one more step before I jump over to the other side. So now this is kind of the build out a story. So I could say, build out the story, blah, blah, blah. I want to modify that. I'll just let it go. And then, 5 would be create all the materials, create all the data that's going to support this story so that I can ask you challenging questions. 6 would be create the questions. 7 is create the activity feedback. And 8 would be create the intro screen. And now we have a full activity.
Here it's generating right now. And so and then you're going to jump into that activity.
Now I'll jump into that, the one that I built earlier. Yeah.
Perfect.
So we can see this. So city crime labs unusually busy, string of high-end home burglaries. That's everyone on edge.
Early premise. Yep.
Right. So there you go. So that's the story. So let's pop one that was already made and see what the student would see.
I'm just imagining Carmen Sandiego back in the day could have been created in 5 minutes. Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, so you saw that. Like I just did half the process in about 5 minutes. It probably would take another 5 to do the other 4 steps.
Yeah.
This one I added a few images to, so I added another maybe 5 or 10 minutes after that process. But in this one, I told it I want it to be in an art museum. So here we go. There's priceless Botticelli sketch has vanished. Your expertise is needed. Here's what you're going to do. Here's your role. I'll come in, set my character.
Yep.
Here are the people I'm going to work with.
Wow.
Alarm at the museum. Priceless Botticelli has been vanished. I come up with Dr. Rodriguez to see what's going on. Okay, so we come in.
And so this could be also though speech. It could be a variety of modalities to interact with it as the learner.
Yes. Yep. Yep. So yeah, they can voice or not voice. Authors have that choice, and we have as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'll turn it off for just a second.
Sure.
But yeah. So this data you're seeing on the right here, all AI generated, created the whole story, created all this data for you, all this dialogue. So I think 2 things about that. One is that it saves a tremendous amount of time versus an instructional designer or subject matter expert having to do all that. But it also provides a collaborator. And, we all work better when we have someone to talk to about the thing we're working on. This actually works pretty well as someone to talk to when you're working on this, which is interesting. Not something we had really thought of beforehand. I'll just show you what the open response is.
Yeah. Let's see it. It's interesting while we're waiting it to come up. I think of all the times I've seen stuff like this that has been super engaging because of the storyline, but how custom and expensive it's felt, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just a use case here is like, if you really love this pedagogical experience, one of the use cases in the AI is you can say, move this to, an auto body shop, move this to a mall, for example, and it can but let's see here. So let's say, I think, blood seems like a good thing, right? So I might say, I think the bloody footprints will be the most useful because they might show us the perpetrator's blood. That was my thought. Actually, that's what I thought the right answer might have been when I did this the first time. It turns out it's not.
So I was going to say, are you what's your criminal forensics background? Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Right. So what's interesting is that what Maya just said there was completely generated off of what I said.
Yep.
And then the grade, which I got 0 out of 4. I didn't do very well at all. But then here's the kind of like, hey, here's why you got the score you got. Because I think it's really important that learners understand that, and also that they can challenge it. So when this is delivered as part of an LMS assignment, there's a challenge opportunity for them to say back to the teacher and the author, hey, I think I should have gotten
how I was thinking about it and blah, blah, blah.
Yep. Here's what I was thinking. And here's why that should be good. Yeah. So that's the basic experience. You can see over here, we've got score categories that are being tracked. There's a feedback screen at the end, which gives them a bunch of feedback, which we're now generating with AI. But again, just trying to keep making it easier to create these very sort of targeted, authentic experiences for learners.
I'm just blown away. It's interesting. I remember the first online course I ever had the chance to take was, I'm going to date myself 20 some odd years ago when I was, enrolling in HBS. And I don't know if you guys actually helped create it, but it was a stats class and it was all simulation based. And I'm just imagining, like, I thought, geez, if everything could be like this, it'd be amazing. But the other thing that occurs to me is you can also vary the format through this much more easily as well, so that you keep it a little bit unexpected. You keep me on my toes. I don't, one of the problems sometimes I think with online courses is, yes, it's at my pace and path, but it becomes a little monotonous and predictable perhaps. And sort of the thrill of novelty wears off. There's that opportunity, I would think, with this as well, to sort of vary what my interactions are like and learning experiences are like.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the whole idea is agency. It's really putting you in an active role, not a passive role. Like you are that person. People are asking you questions. You need to react to them. You need to analyze that information and try to decide what the right course of action is, and as opposed to just consuming the information.
All right. So as we wrap up here, what should we keep an eye on for in this space? If you put that Gates Foundation funded researcher view back on, so not just Muzzy Lane, but just the world of simulations in general, where do you think this goes now with AI over the next 5-10 years?
I think you touched on it earlier. I think more broadening the applicability of these across more areas. There are places like, say, HVAC training, which really need a physical environment. They need 3D stuff. So pushing those AI boundaries to build those 3D assets for you. But I think simulation, in my view, really should be part of any real online learning experience. And I'll sort of make just a little plug for our AI principles, because everyone has to have AI principles. For us, it's three. It's get learners thinking more, not less. And I think you could see from that open response that I had to think harder than if I had a multiple choice there. 2, increase academic integrity, don't decrease it. And I think, again, those active learning experiences are harder to cheat on. And 3rd is we're really focused on making the online component of blended learning better, not replacing the in-person instructional part of online learning, of learning. So I think what we'll see is more complex, more interesting interactions, more subject applicability, and just generally just more, whether it's us or anyone else, like there should be simulations as part of every learning experience. They are a great, cost-effective way for you to practice. It makes you better prepared for assessments, better prepared for in-person apprenticeships and internships and all those things. So that's what we'd like to see.
Beautiful. Hey, Dave, thank you so much for joining us. We'll check in with you in a few years to see how that is bearing fruit, but really appreciate the work you all continue to do.
Great. Thanks, Michael.
You bet. And for all of you tuning in, check out more at Muzzy Lane on the web. And thank you so much for joining us. As always, we'll be back next time on The Future of Education.